Okay, so I guess I'll begin by giving a little bit of history of Kirk. So Kirk was a community of faith that began in 1956. The Kirk building that we are currently in was began being built in 1959, and then they proceeded on as a usual community of faith until about 2015, when there was approximately 25 members of Kirk United Church that were all predominantly over the age of 65. What they were finding was that the building itself, although the waning congregation was a problem, the financial side, as well as just the manpower of the capability of being able to take care of a 20,000 square foot building, just became too much for a congregation that was only about 25 people and all mostly over the age of 65. So in 2015, they needed to take a pretty difficult look at their bottom line financially and bottom line people power wise, to see whether or not they could survive the future as a congregation, as a community of faith. So they made the difficult, which was a very difficult decision for them. They made that decision at the end of 2015 that they could no longer take care of the building. And likely in that, they were looking then at proceeding to disband. Of course, the first thing they did was think, okay, if we can't handle this building anymore, and if we're looking to disband, we need to look at selling the property. And that was, and still I think in many ways continues to be the first thing that people think of. If the United Church congregation isn't in there, then we need to look at selling the building. They were really reluctant to sell the building, something that most of them had worked so hard on from square one, from when the building was built, and just working on the community and their community of faith, as well as the building itself. The building had been built in 4 different stages in 4 different decades. So almost every single one of the community of faith members in 2015 had been involved in some way when it came to the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the construction as well as the building itself. So at that point, Dovercourt community got involved, and there was a bit of panic on the Dovercourt community side that then this building was going to be taken over, torn down, and turned into condos. There was some talk about redeveloping the land where a congregation could still have an area within the condo complex to worship, but because they had so few members, that option was just starting to look less and less viable, and less something that those community of faith members were willing to put the time and effort into. But along those couple of things, the Dovercourt community involvement and the community of faith, that were really so reluctant to head in the direction of tear down and construction of condos within the community, started to get the Edmonton Presbytery involved. The Edmonton Presbytery started throwing, just all sorts of things started to come out and started throwing around ideas. The idea then became using this building for something within the community, while the community of faith were in the process of disbanding, as well as what would happen after that. And they then put together a building committee within the Edmonton Presbytery and some volunteers, and started to look at what this could be. At the time of that this was happening in 2015 and 2016, there were 3 renters in the building that were renting. There were other communities of faith, other congregations that were renting, different denominations, different ethnicities, and there was a lot of involvement of figuring out how they also would not lose their home that they had been in for years. So, oh, here goes my phone. Just turn that right down. So at that point, a new vision. I can't turn it down, apparently. I don't know how to turn it down. It didn't work. Whatever I tried did not work. Sorry about that. But this new vision was starting to emerge of, okay, well, if we already had 3 congregations in here that were willing to continue on and that had no intentions of leaving within that sort of couple of years while Kirk slowly left, they thought this is the place to start. This is the place to begin. So at that point in time, in 2016, I was hired on. At the time. Part of my job was with the Edmonton Press, and part of my job was with the building itself. And we didn't even really know what that meant. We just knew the building needed to be taken care of. It needed to be updated. The title was transferred back to the United Church of Canada. Somebody needed to take, somebody in the city, hands-on, needed to take control of what was happening with the building, to even just get it up to snuff to certain things that had fallen apart and fallen by the wayside when Kirk was already, in those years where Kirk was realizing they could no longer take care of the building. We had no idea what this was going to look like when I came on. I had no clue. The committee I was working with had no clue. We just started working. It was a really great opportunity to work with the Edmonton Press at the same time, because although I had grown up in the United Church of Canada, I'd grown up as a member of the United Church of Canada, but not as a staff that had any idea of the inner workings of the United Church of Canada. So working with the Edmonton Press for that first couple of years really got me involved. Really got me involved with other congregations, with the committees that were going, with the evolution of the regions. Really gave me a good base of people, of connections that I could speak to in Toronto with the region when that happened. It really gave me an opportunity to overlap, which was really necessary to keep the United Church connection with the building as we evolved into something else. The incorporated ministries has always been a very gray area, and an area that hasn't always been clear to people, but also hasn't always been well manned as far as having one particular person that you could go to that had all the answers. So I digress. Anyways, sorry, moving on. We sort of envisioned, our vision when I came in was this Northwest Edmonton, inclusive, multifaceted community center with diverse sort of cultural, educational, religious, spiritual, physical, health, all these facets and how we could make that happen. So I worked in conjunction with the congregation at first, and a lot of my work at first really had to do with the building itself and how to not make the congregation feel as though we were kicking them out while also evolving. That was a difficult process. We sort of ran into a bunch of walls at that point, because it's so difficult for a congregation to leave their building, and it's such a difficult process to have somebody come in and take over their building, and even though they had given up the title to the building, that emotional connection, that physical connection, that place where they had somewhere to go, was a very difficult thing for them to relinquish. And really, I felt as though something that really needed to be respected, so that they could properly evolve into their next step without feeling as though they had been booted. So we worked closely with them, and I at first it was quite a headbutting relationship where I took a few steps back and let them feel how they were going to feel, and let those feelings evolve naturally, and be a part of. I had to become a part of their process, and I felt like that was really important in a situation where the congregation was going to be leaving, And because it was going to take a couple of years before they left, it was a really important part of the process of connecting with the United Church congregation that was there, finding their connection with the United Church of Canada itself and within the community and within the community of the other United Church communities of faith. And that process took us up till June 2019. So it was June of this past year that they disbanded. So it was a 2.5 year process. And when you think it's going to be a 2.5 year process, you really see that 2.5 years is important to still have the Kirk congregation involved in things that were happening, but also to have to be looking forward as to what was going to happen when they weren't there. So they, after June 2019 is when us as the building were actually able to incorporate as a not-for-profit and really become an incorporated ministry of the United Church of Canada. So the last 6 months or 8 months now for us has been an explosion of things that need to be done, an explosion of things that we didn't know were going to come, things that happened that were just evolutionary, but a lot to work with. We're working with no United Church congregation in our building. So since then, and in that time, Kirk Centre's grown to be sort of this thriving community hub. So in that 2 years, we were looking for new renters. We were looking for new relationships. We were looking for new programming, all on this path to be self-sustainable and to be self-sufficient. And that had to be the number one goal initially, because Kirk congregation had no financial responsibility in the building, and they weren't paying any rent. So which was exactly the intention and how we had planned it, and we had no intention of charging them anything as they disband, but we did need to think, okay, how are we going to pay for the staff that this building requires, and how are we going to pay the bills that this building requires, let alone any kind of unexpected upkeeps. And that meant rentals. So there was a big push for rentals in that couple of years before Kirk left to ensure that we could have a sustainable model. So our rentals are provided to communities of worship, to special events. We have office spaces, childcare, health, recreation programming, sports. We are able as a building to have all those different things because we're a 20,500 square foot building where we have 8 spaces that are regularly rentable as just open meeting spaces, event spaces. We also have 10 offices that are open to be rented. That doesn't include the small Sunday school rooms that we have, which we have 5. We have a gymnasium, so that opens us up to sports groups. So we had to really define what in our building was long-term rentable space, what in our building was short-term rent space, as in people that rented for 2 hours twice a week or once a week, and then try to figure out the scheduling jams that come along with that. It is a lot of work just to figure out those spaces and the keys and the time and the scheduling conflict and the security that's going to come to once you have all these people in your building, and how you're going to manage the security and still have security in the building. Things that you logically know, but you really don't think about when you first sort of handed a 20,000 square foot building that has a leaky roof over here and a door that doesn't work properly over here. You really are just sort of putting out fires right off the bat. But once those fires are put out, you start to see all these other logistics of having 1,000 people go through your doors every week. That is that really is a whole set of work all unto itself. So, and that is really in essence where we come to today. So where we have, currently we have 8 different worship groups in here every week. We have all the groups of Girl Guides, all the different levels of Girl Guides, all the different levels of Scouts. We have yoga, dodgeball, soccer. We have a grief counselor that works and has office space here. We have the Northern Spirit Regional Council that has a wing of their own. And some of our denominations have their own office spaces, so they have they're in here on a daily basis. So really what we have is not just a community rental space, but shared workspace. And shared workspace is becoming a much bigger thing now than it has in the past, where people can't necessarily afford to rent a big, huge office space that has a meeting room, that has the digital communication capabilities. In our workspace, and also just the camaraderie, when you have an office of one, it is very difficult to really, for certain small companies, to really have this feeling of camaraderie in an office space. How do you even afford to pay for a photocopier when there's one group? Internet, all these different kinds of things that are really advantageous in a shared workspace. And with an office space that also has the capability of having big seminars, small workshops, office space when you're single office that has your desk and it doesn't have enough room for 3 or 4 people in it to have a meeting, meeting spaces to meet your clients. Those all come with this space. You come and rent an office and you have all these bigger capabilities. You also have people to have coffee with. You have people to have lunch with. You have people to brainstorm with. You have people to have Christmas potluck with. Those are all really important and not easy for really small companies or for people that work out of their house but now need something slightly bigger, or find it difficult to work out of their house because motivation is difficult when you can flip on your TV or pet your dog. So, it gives people the capability, and our number one thing is to try to give it. I am constantly looking at what other people are renting their spaces for and trying to cut that in half. And that is our mandate under our not-for-profit, is to provide this space and to provide it as cheap as we can and subsidize as much as we can of that, and donate certain spaces to fully subsidize certain spaces while also still being able to self-sustain, which is a model that is difficult but worthwhile. So there are a lot of churches that I think that are trying to sort of become this, and we've had a bunch of successes that we've had a lot of feedback from our renters that is super positive about the changes we've been able to make to the building. We've gotten to a financial situation where we can start to really take care of the building and the needs that the building has, and we are above where we're about 40% above where we had expected financially to be by this year. So it does go to show that it can be a successful model. On the other side of that, we've hit a bunch of challenges. We've had unexpected financial challenges. When you pull away from the United Church and become an incorporated ministry, your insurance triples, which was not something that we were aware of. Because we are under the United Church, but we are that arm's length. And also keeping the attention of the United Church of Canada has been very difficult and super isolating for us, especially in this past year where these changes have happened with the regions. It's been very difficult for us to have a name and be known in the United Church and get the support that we felt as though we could use, and not even financial support. When you think support, you immediately think financial, but we're talking incorporated ministry support from the region. We have also, in saying that, we're very quickly separated from the United Church financially, which we did not expect. We did expect that maybe there would be sort of a little bit of assistance as we pulled away, but it was very black and white. So we very quickly needed to sustain ourselves on our own financially without any kind of support, without the financial support from the United Church. And finding the right people to talk to within the community, within the United Church, finding the right people who have the right information, who can give active, solid, and interested advice is on a business model like this has been very difficult, which is why it's so exciting to connect with all you guys. And keeping programming in the United Church that is United Church related. Without a congregation here, how do I continue to keep programming here that is United Church related and keep the interest of the United Church to understand that we have a building here that that United Church groups could use for anything. We actually have more interest from non-United Church groups than we do from internal United Church groups, which is something I would like to remedy, but is not again, it's been this black and white sort of situation where we had United Church connections and now we have none. So that's sort of the nutshell of where we were and where we are now, and then also some of the successes and challenges that we've had. And I'm totally open to any questions, and even after now, questions that you guys might come up. Definitely my email address is open to, or my phone is open, especially apparently in the middle of speaking, is open to any questions that even might come up later.